In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on December 20th, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. North Carolina versus Ohio State. North Carolina and Ohio State get together in Atlanta for a neutral site non-conference showdown at State Farm Arena, part of the annual CBS Sports Classic, with Kentucky and St. John's playing the other game. The number tilts toward North Carolina, which makes sense when you look at how both teams have been tracking, especially with this matchup sitting on a neutral floor in December. The Tar Heels come in at 10-1, and it is not an empty record. They already have wins over big-name opponents like Kansas and Kentucky, so this is not just a soft schedule start propping them up. Senior guard Seth Trimble is expected to be back in the rotation on Saturday, and that matters both for their on-ball defense and for how comfortable they are in late clock situations. His return also lets everyone slide back into more natural roles, which quietly helps the offense feel less forced. Defensively, North Carolina's profile is exactly what you want if you are laying a small spread. Per KenPom, they sit 5th nationally in 2-point percentage defense, 5th in effective field goal percentage defense, and 22nd in adjusted defensive efficiency. That combination of rim protection, contesting jumpers, and general consistency is backed up by their size. With their length up front, they can bother drives, wall off the lane, and still close out to shooters without scrambling all over the place. Against an Ohio State team that has not yet proven it can handle elite length for 40 minutes, that is a pretty big card to hold. Ohio State's resume, on the other hand, is shakier than its raw record suggests. They have already dropped games to Illinois and Pittsburgh, and that Pitt loss looks especially rough given where Pitt sits in the ACC pecking order. Their most recent outing was that double overtime escape against West Virginia, winning by just 1 point after a long, tiring effort. It was entertaining, sure, but not exactly the sort of performance that screams ready to handle a top-tier defense in the next game. Then there is the betting side of it. Against the spread, Ohio State is sitting at 4-6 on the season, which is a pretty clear sign this group has been overrated by the market so far. They have not consistently delivered when the number actually asks something of them. North Carolina, by contrast, is 7-4 against the spread and has done it while playing real competition, not just padding things with easy wins. That is not everything, but it lines up with the eye test that says UNC is more reliable possession to possession. On a neutral floor, with no true home court juice for the Buckeyes, you would usually want more points with the underdog before you talk yourself into backing them. Here, the matchup edge in size, the stronger defensive numbers, and the cleaner overall resume all sit on the North Carolina side. When a favorite has already shown it can beat teams like Kansas and Kentucky, and the underdog is still trying to prove it belongs in that tier, the small number quite naturally pulls you toward the proven group. North Carolina has been the steadier, more impressive team on both ends, and that is exactly what you are paying for with this spread. As our first pick for this matchup, the North Carolina Tar Heels to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Some programs almost automatically attract public money on overs, and North Carolina lives in that bucket. The brand, the history, the highlight reels, all of it nudges casual bettors toward expecting points. Odds makers know that, so totals for teams like this are often set a little high, and the books have been rewarded so far because North Carolina has only gone over the total in 2 of its 11 games. The way this roster is built explains a lot of that trend. North Carolina does not play fast right now, ranking only 204th nationally in tempo. That slower pace is not really an accident. They are no longer a perimeter-driven group firing early threes and racing up and down for 40 minutes. Instead, their offense leans hard on their front court. Visor and Wilson both operate as post threats, and when your best players love to work inside, possessions tend to stretch out. Entries to the post, reposts, kickouts, resets, that whole rhythm eats clock, especially against a decent defense. Ohio State is not exactly looking to turn this into a track meet either. If you are the underdog against a bigger, more talented front line, your smartest move is usually to slow things down, live in the half court, and reduce the number of possessions. Fewer trips up and down the floor mean fewer chances for that size gap to show up in transition. So from the Buckeyes' perspective, controlling tempo, grinding through sets, and forcing UNC to score against a set defense is almost a game plan and a survival tactic rolled into one. Put those pieces together and you get a game script that does not scream fireworks. You have a public program that has been cashing unders, a tempo profile that sits in the slow half of the country, and two teams that both have reasons to value control over chaos. Could the shooting spike and push this over anyway? Sure, it is basketball, but the more likely outcome is another methodical game where the ball goes inside a lot, the clock keeps moving, and the final score lands below what the market is asking. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston versus Arkansas. Houston and Arkansas meeting in Newark for the Never Forget Tribute Classic on Saturday, December 20th. 2025 feels like one of those early season games that already carries March energy, even if the calendar says it is still December. Neutral floor, national TV, NBA-style arena, and two fan bases that travel. That is a recipe for a game that feels a little bigger than just another non-conference box score. Houston rolls in at 10-1, top 10 in the polls, and fresh off 4 straight wins after that neutral site loss to Tennessee, where they basically spent the next few weeks reminding everyone that their identity has not changed. They win by leaning into discomfort, yours not theirs. Long possessions, bodies on the glass, and that classic, you are not running your stuff at full speed tonight pressure on the perimeter. Here's the thing, while the numbers say the Cougars have been winning those games by roughly 27 points in that post-Tennessee stretch, it actually feels even worse if you are on the other side. They are not racing you, they are just landing the same jab over and over. The backcourt and wings, guys like Emmanuel Sharp, Kingston Flemings, Milo Suzanne, Chris Sinek Jr., and Joseph Tugler give them this nice combination of calm and nastiness, the sort of group that can be down to 5 on the shot clock and still look like they are right on schedule. Honestly, it almost looks boring sometimes, and that is a compliment. They make nothing happening feel like a winning strategy. Arkansas at 9-2 with a mid-teens ranking brings a very different flavor. They want to hit you with color and noise. Darius Acuff Jr., Trayvon Brazile, Malik Thomas, and that whole crew give the Razorbacks real fireworks, but also real volatility. You know how some teams feel like a playlist on shuffle, where you might get a classic and then a song you always skip? That is kind of Arkansas right now. When the shots are falling, everything is loud, the pace speeds up, the crowd leans forward, and it looks like they could hang a number on anyone in the country. When the shots cool off and possessions slow, you can see the seams. On a true neutral floor, without Bud Walton roaring or a campus crowd to ride the waves, that difference in personality starts to matter. A slower, more deliberate game favors the side that is comfortable winning ugly, and Houston has been living in that lane for years. Their recent neutral site reps and the way they have carried that post-Tennessee response into blowout margins make them the more trustworthy outfit to follow the game plan from tip to buzzer. If you are trying to figure out which side is more likely to handle the spread when things get tense late, the team that is already built around defense, rebounding, and possession control has the cleaner path. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Cougars to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. On paper, if you just glance at basic scoring numbers, you might shrug and think points, points, and more points. Arkansas has been living right around 90 points per game through 11 contests, which is comfortably above what an average college team scores. Houston, sitting closer to 78 per game, brings a more balanced profile, but their defensive reputation makes people instinctively nervous about an over. It is kind of like seeing a fast sports car parked behind a snowplow. You have to decide which vehicle is actually setting the speed. Let me explain. Arkansas's loudest scorelines have come when they are front-running against overmatched defenses. Those are the nights where you see 108-80 against Queens, 115-61 against Jackson State, or 93-56 against Central Arkansas. And everybody online starts posting, "This offense is insane" clips. Those games absolutely count, and they matter if you are trying to understand how high their ceiling is. But when the level of physical resistance goes up, the scoreboard behaves differently. Against Duke, they ended up in that 71-80 type of game. Against Michigan State, they are living in a 66-69 grind. Even in that 82-58 win over Fresno State, the Razorbacks did their damage while still keeping the whole thing in a pretty controlled scoring lane. Houston's track record this season points in the same direction, but from the other side of the glass. They are perfectly happy winning by huge margins without pushing the total into the 150s or 160s. Think about results like 80-38 over Jackson State, 66-56 over Notre Dame, 78-45 over Oakland, or 65-48 over Towson. The opponent's score keeps landing in that uncomfortable 60s or below zone, and the Cougars rarely look rushed trying to inflate their own point total. It is almost like watching someone win a race by taking the perfect line on every turn rather than just flooring it. Once you shift this matchup into a showcase neutral environment, with both staffs knowing the TV windows, knowing the stakes, and likely tightening their rotations, it tilts the rhythm even more toward a controlled pace. Coaches usually trust their half-court stuff in spots like this. They shorten the bench a bit, value each possession a bit more, and that naturally shaves a few trips off the game. So when the projected number for this total lands in that mid-140s range, you are basically being asked whether Arkansas can drag Houston into a true track meet, or if Houston's habit of pulling opponents down into the 60s and low 70s wins that tug of war. Given how these two have actually played their better opponents so far, the script that repeats most often looks more like a tense, methodical game than a full-on shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Purdue versus Auburn. Saturday brings a marquee non-conference matchup with number 21 Auburn heading in to face number 6 Purdue, and it has that classic feel of new-look roster against veteran core. Auburn is still figuring itself out with so many fresh faces in the rotation, while Purdue mostly runs it back with the group that made last season so successful. That kind of continuity usually shows up in games like this, especially when emotions are involved. The memory of last year's blowout loss to Auburn definitely hangs over the home locker room, and that kind of sting tends to sharpen focus. You can almost feel this setting up as a statement game for Purdue, even if they do not completely control things from the opening tip. The game may stay competitive for stretches, but late in the second half, that experience gap and size edge can really start to widen the scoreline. Home crowds in college hoops love nothing more than watching a veteran team pull away, and this sets up pretty neatly for that kind of script. On the floor, Purdue has some very clear structural edges. They project to have a solid advantage on the glass, and they love to attack inside. The Boilermakers rank 4th nationally in near proximity shooting percentage, which basically means they live at the rim and finish well when they get there. They are also elite on second chance chances, sitting second in potential quick points off offensive rebounds compared to the average opponent, according to Haslametrics. When a team gets quality looks at the rim the first time and then creates extra ones after misses, it becomes very hard for a defense that is still inconsistent to hang in there for 40 minutes. Auburn, to its credit, will not just roll over. The Tigers will try to flip the chessboard by attacking Purdue's bigs, hoping to pile up fouls and thin out that interior wall. On paper, it is not a bad idea. In practice, Purdue has done a great job of staying disciplined, giving up the lowest opponent free throw attempt rate in the country. That tells you their bigs contest without hacking, and the help rotations behind them are usually in the right spots. If Auburn cannot manufacture a steady parade to the free throw line, it is left trading jumpers against a team that scores relentlessly near the rim. The recent resumes push the same direction. Purdue has just one loss, although that one was a rough 23-point home setback against Iowa State, while still shooting an efficient 51% from the field for the year and holding 4 of its last 5 opponents to 65 points or fewer. Auburn is off to an 8-3 start, but those losses by 29 to Arizona and 30 to Michigan are not exactly confidence builders, especially when paired with a defense that has allowed 78 or more in 3 of its last 5 games. That kind of profile usually cracks when it faces a physical, organized offense for a full game. Taken all together, the veteran core, home setting, rebounding edge, and superior interior scoring lean heavily one way. As our first pick for this matchup, the Purdue Boilermakers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The under has gone 8-3 in Purdue's games this season, and that is not some random quirk. It fits how this team prefers to play. They are comfortable in slower games, and their entire approach encourages longer, more deliberate possessions rather than constant run and gun. Purdue is ranked 332nd nationally in schedule-adjusted tempo per KenPom, which plants them firmly in the slow lane. That pace is not an accident. With their size and structure, they are more than happy to grind things out in the half-court, where they can control matchups and spacing. To cover their own number and stay in control, they do not really want a wild tempo anyway. The slower the game, the more each possession turns into a test of discipline, and that setup almost always helps the more experienced group. Their rebounding chops might sound like an argument for more points, but in reality they often contribute to quieter totals. Purdue ranks 6th in total rebounding percentage and 4th in offensive rebounding percentage. That means they extend possessions rather than just triggering quick breakouts every time. Extra offensive boards become more 20-second half-court trips, where they can post up, reverse the ball, and wait for a high percentage look. It is still efficient basketball, just not frantic. On the other side, Auburn's offense runs into some specific problems against this profile. The Tigers prefer to get into the paint, but Purdue's defense is built to push opponents toward tougher looks from the perimeter. If the visitors are forced into too many contested jump shots, you get empty trips, and empty trips in a slow-paced game pile up quickly. That is how you wind up with scoring that feels fine if you are watching, yet quietly settles under the number. There is always the chance that Auburn's streak of allowing 78+ in 3 of its last 5 pushes the game towards something higher scoring. Still, when you combine Purdue's slow tempo, their control of the glass, their patience on offense, and their ability to funnel Auburn into lower quality attempts, the more likely outcome is a methodical game that never really turns into a track meet. The overall shape looks much more like a grind than a shootout. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Duke versus Texas Tech. The Duke Blue Devils and the Texas Tech Red Raiders meet at Madison Square Garden on Saturday night for a high-profile non-conference matchup inside one of the most famous arenas on the planet. Duke should have a big crowd edge because their fan base usually travels well for New York games, which turns a neutral court into something that feels pretty close to a home gym. The Blue Devils still have not lost this season, and you can feel how confident they are starting to play. From a spread point of view, the case for Duke is pretty simple. They have more top-end talent, and their defensive ceiling is higher than what Texas Tech can realistically bring for 40 minutes. Duke is anchored by freshman standout Cameron Boozer, who projects to have the upper hand in his individual matchup with Texas Tech star JT Toppin. Texas Tech's offense flows through Toppin, and while he is very good, life gets a lot tougher for him when he is attacking into Duke's interior size and timing. The advanced numbers back that up. On KenPom, Duke sits first in effective field goal percentage defense, second in two-point defense, and third in overall adjusted defensive efficiency. That is not just good on paper, that is the profile of a group that can completely squeeze the life out of a half-court offense when it locks in. When you add that context to a spread conversation, it tilts things toward Duke handling their business as the favorite more often than not. Their defensive identity blends with a balanced offense that can hurt you in different ways. Boozer controlling the paint, Isaiah Evans stretching the floor with perimeter shooting, and Dongba II giving even more power inside gives the Blue Devils several pressure points to attack the Red Raiders. Duke's defense has been holding opponents under 61 points per game in 2025, which is no small feat against modern offenses. That kind of profile usually travels well, and it makes it easier for a favorite to separate late because they can string together stops when nerves kick in. Now, there is a bit of tension between the raw strength of Duke and the market history on these two programs. Texas Tech is just 3-7-1 against the spread so far this season, while Duke sits at 7-4 against the spread, which matches what your eyes probably say about each team. Duke fans are likely to show up in force at Madison Square Garden, while Texas Tech fans have a very understandable distraction with the CFB playoff coming up soon. Duke should be favored, that part makes sense, but it is still a sizable number to lay against a Red Raiders team that can score and puts one of the best players on the court in Toppin. Looking a bit longer term, since January 2022, Texas Tech is 11-5-1 against the spread when catching 5 or more points as an underdog. That trend reminds you that this program is rarely a free square when it is getting a chunk of points. They are not a pushover, and you are not going to see this kind of generous number with the Red Raiders very often. This matchup has the feel of a game that might still hang in the balance in the last 5 minutes, even if Duke has controlled most of the night. As our first pick for this matchup, the Texas Tech Red Raiders to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Duke's defense is built to slow opponents, wall off the lane, and limit clean looks at the rim, which usually drags scores down a bit. Holding teams under 61 points per game in 2025 is not an accident. It speaks to consistent focus, good scouting, and a lot of length contesting shots. That kind of defensive presence tends to shave a few possessions off what you might expect from a typical high major matchup at a neutral venue. On the other hand, you still have plenty of offensive talent on the floor. Duke can play inside through Boozer, spot up Evans on the perimeter, and let Ngongba too do damage around the rim, so they are not exactly stuck in a rock fight unless they choose to be. Texas Tech, for their part, runs a lot through Toppin, and when he settles into rhythm, games can suddenly feel more free-flowing, even against tough defenses. So while the defensive numbers lean toward a more controlled and somewhat lower scoring script, the skill level on both sides keeps the door open for stretches where the scoring spikes for a few minutes at a time. Honestly, you can imagine this one landing in a middle lane, not a full track meet, but not a grind where both teams live in the 50s either. The combination of Duke's ability to suppress efficiency and Texas Tech's capacity to punch back on offense suggests a total that lives somewhere in that balanced area where one strong defensive stretch or one hot shooting run decides whether it feels slightly low scoring or slightly high scoring by the final buzzer. Quick note on obvious issues in the original write-up. The main logical conflict is that the body of the analysis spends a lot of time explaining why Duke is the better side against the spread, but the final bracketed line makes the official pick Texas Tech plus the points. That is a clear inconsistency between the reasoning and the stated selection. Everything else, like the matchup details and trend references, fits together reasonably well. Books hanging a total in the mid-150s are basically saying, go on, treat this like a track meet. And on paper, you can see why people would be tempted. Both teams can score. Duke has been up around the high 80s in points per game. Texas Tech has lived in the low 80s, and casual logic says, two good offenses, big arena, TV lights, points, points, points. Here is the thing though, totals are not decided by how many scores are on the floor. They are decided by what kind of shots you get, how quickly you get into them, and how many possessions die ugly. This is where Duke's current season profile quietly shoves the total in a different direction. The same Tech game notes that hype up their own offense also point out that Duke is holding opponents to roughly mid-30s shooting from the field and around 60 points per game. That is nasty defense. It slows your rhythm, makes you second-guess drives, and pushes you into late clock decisions. Then you stack on Duke's own turnover mess against Lipscomb, that 22 turnover performance with 16 in the first half. That is the kind of thing that can show up again in mini bursts, especially when you shift to a neutral court. Turnovers can mean easy points, sure, but they can also mean a string of dead possessions, offensive fouls, miscommunications, and broken sets. Every time either side coughs the ball up early in the clock, you lose the chance at a full possession, and totals drift downward a little. Texas Tech's situation feeds into that picture too. With guys like Akuintok and Mosley clearly not in the normal rotation right now and Bamboy dealing with injury issues, you are not exactly looking at a team that wants to play a 40-minute sprint. A slightly tightened or fragile front court usually nudges a coach toward a more measured game. You pick your spots to run, you protect your bigs from foul trouble, and you try not to turn this into a relay race. That is not some mystical "they will definitely slow down" guarantee. It is just the way most staffs manage risk when bodies are limited. You can also layer in the human side. MSG showcase games often start a little sticky. Players feel the moment, the crowd, the national broadcast. You get extra passes when a shot is open. You get a few more rush jumpers when someone wants a hero moment. And the early part of the game can be more about nerves than rhythm. That does not show up on the injury report or KenPom. But if you have watched enough neutral site December games, you have seen it play out. So while the raw scoring averages scream this should soar, the match style whispers something else. You have one elite defense that forces long possessions and tough looks, a Texas Tech team that has reasons to be a little more deliberate, and a recent example of Duke playing some very sloppy, very total unfriendly stretches of basketball. You do not need a rock fight here. You just need enough friction, enough wasted trips, and enough half-court grind to keep this thing from turning into a 90-80 type show. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Arizona versus San Diego State. Arizona rolls in playing like a buzzsaw in school colors, fresh off that demolition of Abilene Christian where they shot a ridiculous 66.7% from the floor, knocked down 30 of 38 at the stripe, and controlled the glass by a huge margin, 38-23. Even in a game like that, the one nitpick was the sloppiness, those 19 turnovers that turned into a pile of Abilene Christian steals and runouts, which is wildly on brand for a team that plays fast and occasionally gets a little loose with the ball. The trade-off, of course, is the payoff. That win made it 5 straight games with 96 or more on the scoreboard, and 2 of those explosions came against ranked Southeastern Conference opponents, which is not exactly soft scheduling. San Diego State comes in after handling Air Force with a clean, professional effort, shooting an efficient 50.8% and winning the rebounding battle 35-26, part of a 3-game heater where they have been dropping 77 or more on everyone and stacking a 4-1 run over their last 5. Now zoom out and think like a bettor, not just a fan. Arizona sits at 10-0 overall, unbeaten at home, and the numbers back up what your eyes are seeing. They grade out as a top 45 outfit both on offense and on defense, with a scoring margin sitting at plus 22.6 that looks more like a video game slider than a real stat sheet. They are not just winning, they are cashing 7-3 against the spread and rewarding people who keep backing them even as the market keeps nudging those numbers higher. San Diego State is a quality group at 6-3, but they are sitting at 3-5-1 against the spread, still trying to figure out who they are against good teams, and this is their first true test away from home, even if it is technically a neutral court. PHX Arena will not feel neutral when that building fills up with red and blue and every Arizona run sounds like a home game. And that matters when you are asking a team that has not left its own building much to hang inside a number against the hottest group in the country. When you put all of that together, it shapes a story where Arizona's tempo, depth, and comfort in this kind of stage make it much more likely the game tilts toward another double-digit margin rather than a wire-to-wire sweat for the favorite. As our first pick for this matchup, the Arizona Wildcats to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. If you look at the names, you might expect a classic offense versus defense clash, with Arizona as the high-powered attack and San Diego State as the stubborn defensive brand that likes those tight, low-scoring finals. Honestly, that is more of a reputation thing than a current season reality. Arizona is pouring in around 90 points per game, and they are doing it efficiently, to the point where turning quality opponents into track meets is starting to feel routine. When games in the high 80s and 90s become normal, it changes what a typical night looks like. San Diego State is not exactly crawling the ball up the floor either. They are right around 82 points per game. Their offense looks healthy, and the defense has been more good than suffocating, giving up roughly mid-70s on average. If you just add those tendencies together without even talking about tempo, you are already knocking on the door of a combined total that lives in the 170s neighborhood. And that is before you think about the opponent, the building, or how the game flow might push both teams into even more possessions than usual. Let me explain why the specific rhythm of this matchup pushes the needle even more toward offense. Arizona's tempo is already high. They love to push off makes as well as misses, and their depth means they can keep fresh legs on the floor while still playing aggressive on both ends. That kind of style often drags the other team into a faster game almost by accident. San Diego State does not have the luxury of playing for a slow 62-58 kind of result here, because if they fall behind, they are going to have to let their guards hunt quick threes, attack early in the clock, and maybe extend the fourth quarter with fouls just to give themselves extra chances. Neutral site NBA arenas like Mortgage Matchup Center also tend to help offense a bit. The sightlines are clean, the floor is familiar to shooters who have grown up watching games in these types of buildings, and with both teams running deep rotations, there is not much reason to expect a tired, slug-it-out rock fight. You have 2 capable offenses, both used to playing with pace, and 2 defenses that, while solid, have shown they can bend when the opponent keeps attacking in waves. So when you ask what kind of story the scoreboard is likely to tell, the more natural script feels like trading buckets and long runs rather than long stretches of silence. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.